Hey, it's another episode of Before You Buy, the show where we give you some straight up gameplay and some thoughts and feelings on what we're doing in the games that we're checking out. I'm Falcon, and today we're taking a look at Elex. And I'm gonna start off by saying if you like Piranha Bytes and their previous games like Gothic, and you really don't expect it to be much more, you probably will like this. And here's the thing, I'm not gonna tell you it's a bad game or anything, but I'm also not gonna tell you it's great. Elex is about a planet called Magalan, and basically what happens after a meteor hits it. Destroys a society, widespread destruction, everything devolves into factions, etc, etc. You've heard it before, and that's kind of the problem. Even the sort of magic system is something that just really feels very familiar to me. There's a substance called Elex, which isn't pronounced anything like how it's spelled. Factions deal with Elex in different ways. There's one faction that gets addicted to it and acts really out of whack. Kind of reminds me of Splicers and BioShock. Really reminds me of Splicers and BioShock, actually. Except for it came from a meteor instead of scientific research. Which is interesting because this is basically a sci-fi game, albeit set in a fantasy world, which is at times cool and at times I question it. So there's in-game logic that kind of bothers me. There's architecture from the quote-unquote old world all over the place, and then there's medieval towns built around them. Like they literally use hay to make the roofs of their structures. And I feel like, yes, it does demonstrate that the sort of expectations have devolved somewhat in architecture and society. But you got all these people hanging around these buildings that survived a comet hitting the planet, and they don't spend the time to go, wait, maybe we shouldn't be using hay for our roof. Speaking of logic, there is an oppressively large amount of talking in which you have a million options to choose from. Right off the bat, you meet somebody and you can have an in-depth conversation with them about literally everything going on in your life and their life. And while I might be exaggerating a little, keep in mind, I'm exaggerating only a little. This game is so filled with talking. Everywhere you go, it's talk, talk, talk. And not in the fun Witcher way, where everybody has something interesting to say. It's all just tedious exposition explaining things to you. And no, it does not stop once you get past the first few hours of the game. People never stop explaining crap to you. I haven't beaten the game, but I've certainly gotten further than the footage I've intended to include here, which obviously we've kept to the first stretch of the game intentionally, so if you do happen to want to play it, there's no major spoilers, although I'll say I haven't really encountered anything that I would consider majorly spoilable, if that's a spoiler for you. If you notice, I didn't talk about the combat up front, and there's a reason for that. It's because this combat feels like it's from 2006. It's not fluid, there's not a lot of options, there's no real vagaries to the system. It's basically slow-paced battles that we've seen a billion times, and again, to bring up The Witcher, we've seen it done better. Even The Witcher, which the combat is not advanced per se, nails the kind of thing that they're trying to do, giving you a lot more options and making the combat deep. I have not seen a point in this game that made me think the combat was deep. And what kind of sucks is they made sure that it felt boring up front. The first couple hours of this game are just easily the worst part of the game. And you know, maybe if this game costs like $15, $20, I probably wouldn't be as judgmental, but this is a $60 AAA supposedly game. And while AAA doesn't necessarily mean great, you do kind of expect it to keep up with some of the conventions that we call modern at this point, and this game really, really doesn't. To bring up BioShock again, it really felt like somebody said, well, I like BioShock, but I also want a game that's pretty much Skyrim or Fallout or both at once. But I want it to be fantasy, like magic-y fantasy. I want some scruffy dudes in furs walking around. I want straw roofs. And none of it really ever comes together. And I'll say this. I told you at the beginning, it's not a bad game. And it really isn't. It's not a bad game. But here's the issue. If you made this game in the mid-2000s, The thing people would be amazed about is the size of the world and some of the environmental effects. But even at that point, I don't think anybody would have been like, wow, this brings something new to the table, even one thing new to the table, because it does not. This is kind of every aimless RPG from the mid-2000s that is competent and decent for the most part, systemically speaking, but has nothing at all to say. Ultimately, I don't want to crap on the game because there are much worse experiences out there that, for whatever reason, have gotten a lot bigger pushes by various publications and people. But if you're going to buy a $60 game this month, just one or even one of a few, I don't think Elex is going to be really worth it for you. Even just sitting down to record, to try to think about things that are notable to say about it, feels tedious. This is a tedious game. And that doesn't necessarily mean bad, but it does mean, unless you really like busy work, I don't really know what there is for you in this game. It's a lot of busy work, a lot of talking, and not a lot of combat. Not that the combat is what I would even call a main attraction for the game. Basically, if you like old Piranha Bytes games and don't like evolution in gameplay or genre, and don't mind frame rate drops, this is kind of basically exactly what you want. But I don't think that anybody is like that. And here's the thing, I can't recommend buying it, but I can't savage it either. There's not enough going on, and trumping up outrage about, frankly, just a dull game that doesn't try hard enough, or maybe tries too hard, I don't know. It wouldn't be honest, but to be totally honest, this game probably is going to leave you feeling shortchanged. It's a $60 game that feels like it was released a decade ago. If there's any further viewpoints on this game, and I think that there probably might be, because like I said, if you like Piranha Bytes games, and you have a certain nostalgia for exactly this level of game development, you may like this. And it's something that scratches a really specific itch, and if you don't have that itch, it is kind of excruciating. Leave us a comment, tell us what you think. If you enjoyed this video, please click like, and if you're not subscribed, now would be a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week, and the best way to see them is, of course, a subscription. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter @FalconTheHero, and we'll see you next time right here on gameranx.